She liked the silence. It gave structure to her days, which were otherwise blurry with translation work, unread messages from her sister, and the soft hum of the fridge that buzzed like an old friend. Oh, Elise Harrow, 37, hadn't left the building in 4 days. Not out of sadness, not even anxiety. She just didn't see the point. Groceries were delivered, work came through email, and as long as she kept up with deadlines and fed her snake plant twice a month, the world could spin without her. She lived on the 4th floor of a faded peach-colored complex in Glendale, Arizona, the kind with stucco walls that peeled in summer and heaters that coughed in winter. Her neighbors kept to themselves. No one smiled in the elevator. No one knocked. So when it happened at 6:42 p.m., just as she was finishing a chapter of legal text from Dutch to English, Elise jumped. A knock. Not loud, not urgent, but specific. She froze, pen in hand. No deliveries, no appointments, no expected anything. It came again. 3 soft knocks, a pause, then 2 more. She walked to the door, barefoot, heart ticking louder than it should. Oh, no peephole, just a chain lock. Hello? A pause. Then a voice, old, gentle, cracked like a record. May? Elise blinked. Sorry, I think you have the wrong door. The voice again, this time with more certainty. Oh, May, I finally found you. The man's voice wobbled with relief, like someone who had just finished a long walk home. Elise hesitated. Her hand hovered near the chain. Who is it? It's Grandpa, to live across the hall. They said you moved here. It's you, isn't it? She knew there was an elderly man in 4B. She'd seen him once, with the nurse helping him into a car. Thin, upright, a military ball cap too big for his small frame. This was probably him, and he was probably confused. Elise opened the door halfway, the chain still across. A man stood there, hands shaking, a cardigan buttoned wrong. His eyes were glassy, pale blue, and wide with something too honest to be fake. May, he whispered again, voice softening. Elise opened her mouth to correct him, to explain. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way his shoulders sagged like this moment had been holding him up. Maybe it was the way her name, May, hung in the air like a memory she hadn't lived. She unlatched the chain. Would you like to come in? He smiled like she had just given him the sun. Only if you have those lemon cookies. You used to sneak them from your mom's tin. Elise stared at him. Then, quietly, she stepped aside. Come in, Grandpa. Elise didn't have lemon cookies. She barely had dinner. But she did have a box of ginger snaps from last winter, and a bag of flour she hadn't opened since her birthday. As the old man sat at her kitchen table, hands folded politely, eyes scanning the room like it was a museum of memories, Elise moved around quietly, unsure why she was doing any of it. I'm not much of a baker, she said, opening the pantry. He chuckled. Neither was your mother, but you used to try. Burned half the tin one Christmas, remember? She didn't answer, just pulled out ingredients with shaking hands. He didn't notice. He was smiling too deeply, too far back in some place only he could see. Her apartment was small, lived in. The couch sagged in the middle. One corner shelf was crammed with books in every language. Another held succulents that refused to die. There were no photos. No framed memories. She wondered if he noticed that too. While the cookies baked simple, clumsy rounds of sweet dough, she poured 2 cups of tea. "I always knew you'd come back," he said, watching the steam rise. "I told your father, I said, May's not gone. She just needs space. And here you are." Elise sat across from him, her fingers tight around the mug. "How long have you been looking for me?" He smiled into his tea. "Since the summer you stopped writing. Maybe 5 years. Maybe 10. Time's tricky now." She nodded slowly. It was happening. She was pretending. She was lying, and yet not fully. Because something in her, something lonely and quiet, wanted to be May, just for tonight. When the cookies were done, pale, uneven, too soft in the center, she brought them over. He took one with reverence. "Still too much lemon," he said, biting in. There wasn't any lemon at all. But he smiled like it was perfect. "You look tired, sweetheart," he added. "Still translating for the courts?" Elise blinked. "Yes." It was easier than correcting him. They sat in silence for a long while. Outside, a sprinkler hissed to life. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried once and then went quiet. When he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. He took her hand, held it for a moment too long. "I'm glad you're home," he whispered. And then he was gone, back across the hall. Elise locked the door and leaned against it. The apartment felt warmer. Or maybe her chest did. She wasn't May. She had never been more seen. The next morning, Elise wasn't sure if it had really happened. The cardigan, the cookies, the word grandpa passing through her lips like it belonged there. But at 10:06 a.m., there it was again, a knock. 3. Pause. 2 more. She opened the door before she could talk herself out of it. He stood there, dressed a little better this time, navy sweater, tan pants, a combed part in his thinning white hair. "Morning, May," he said, like this was how things had always been. "Morning," she said, and stepped aside. No questions, no corrections, just tea and toast this time. It became a rhythm. Every morning by 10, he'd knock. Sometimes with a small offering, an old newspaper, a packet of sugar, once even a rubber duck he claimed had escaped from your childhood bath. Elise played along, quietly, carefully. She never asked about the real May. She didn't dare. But she noticed things. The way he sometimes paused mid-sentence, like the word he needed had fallen down a hole. The way he called her honey when he forgot May. The way his hands trembled when he thought she wasn't looking. She Googled early dementia late one night, the screen casting a ghostly blue across her tired face. She read for hours, and when she closed the laptop, her chest ached not with fear, but something gentler, like mourning for someone she hadn't even known until 3 days ago. On Thursday, he brought an old photo album. "I thought you'd like to look at these. I kept them for when you came back." The album was cracked and dusty, but Elise took it like it was holy. Inside, grainy black and white photos of a little girl with thick curls and a smile too wide for her cheeks. May. In some of the pictures, there was a younger version of him, taller, stronger, holding her hand at a beach, carrying her on his shoulders at what looked like a carnival. "You were always climbing things," he chuckled. "Once got stuck in a laundry chute. Your grandma nearly fainted. Elise smiled softly, flipping the pages. The girl in the pictures looked nothing like her, but something in her chest whispered, "Be that memory, just a little longer." He fell asleep on her couch that afternoon, his head back, mouth slightly open, hands clasped across his stomach. Elise covered him with a blanket, then sat in the chair across from him and watched the rise and fall of his chest. It was the safest she'd felt in years. By the second week, Elise knew his favorite tea. She knew how to soften her voice when he struggled for a word. She learned to smile when he mentioned things she'd never lived: a lake house, a dog named Buttons, a terrible boyfriend from college he said she'd broken up with herself. Each lie was a pinprick, but each smile he gave in return felt like a bandage. She let the fantasy live day by day, until it cracked. It started with the mail. Elise found an envelope in her box one afternoon. No return address, but the name caught her. To May Whitmore. She stared at it for a long time. She didn't open it. She couldn't. Instead, she took it across the hall and slid it under his door. That night, he didn't come. The next morning, no knock. Not at 10. Not at all. Elise tried not to pace. She made tea anyway, cleaned the already clean counter, folded a throw blanket, then unfolded it again. At 2:14 p.m., she finally stepped into the hallway and knocked. 3 times, pause, 2 more. His door creaked open slowly. He stood there in his robe, hair uncombed, the letter in his hand. "I waited for you," he said, not angry, just lost. "You didn't come. I thought maybe you'd gone again." Lisa's throat tightened. "No," she said softly. "I just thought you needed space." He blinked, then smiled. "You always did worry too much." He stepped aside. She entered. That afternoon, he told her a story about May's piano recital, how she froze halfway through, panicked, and how he walked up on stage and sat beside her, tapping the keys until she remembered the song. "You shook all over," he laughed. "But you finished. You always finished." Elise didn't know where the real May was, but in that moment she envied her. Not for the memories, but for being someone so loved. That night, Elise sat on the floor of her apartment, back to the couch, knees pulled to her chest. The letter still echoed in her mind. She didn't know why it hurt. Maybe because she'd opened a door she couldn't close again. Maybe because pretending was easier than being alone. Maybe because, somewhere deep down, she wanted him to be hers and her to be his. Even if none of it was true. The hallway felt different that morning. He didn't knock, she knew he wouldn't, but she made the tea anyway. 2 cups, light honey, just how he liked it. By noon, she crossed the hall again, this time with something in her hands, a small plate of toast and jam, and the courage she didn't feel. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Then a voice from inside, unfamiliar, brisk, female. "Hold on." The door opened halfway. A woman stood there, mid-30s, jeans, sweater, key lanyard around her neck. Startled eyes, a cautious smile. "Hi, can I help you?" Elise hesitated. "I live across the hall. I was just checking on him. He usually comes over in the mornings." The woman's expression shifted. "You must be the neighbor. I've heard a lot about you." Elise blinked. "I'm sorry, and you are?" "I'm May. his granddaughter. Silence, like a glass cup dropped somewhere inside Elise's chest. May, real, smiling, breathing. Not her. May stepped aside. "You can come in if you want." Elise entered like a ghost. The apartment was neat, warmer than she expected. Photos lined the shelves of the man she'd come to know, and a girl with long curls. A younger May. The same smile. He sat in his chair near the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the street. When he saw Elise, he brightened. "There's my girl," he said. May smiled gently. "Grandpa, this is Elise, your neighbor." He looked between them. Confused, then blank, then a slow nod. "Right, Elise. Sorry, sometimes." He looked down at his hands. May stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, you just get wires crossed." But Elise saw it. In his eyes. He still believed, even now. Back in her apartment, Elise sat in the dark. Not from shame, not from jealousy, but from the weight of the truth pressing in around her. She wasn't his family. But she had been, for 2 weeks. And she hadn't lied to him. She'd lied to herself. The next day there was no knock. No rustle behind the door. No newspaper folded crooked in her hallway. Just the humming silence of the hallway and a teacup that stayed full. Elise tried to focus on work, opened the translation window, typed half a sentence, erased it, started again. Nothing stuck. At 4:20 p.m., she caved. She walked across the hall, soft socks on laminate, the hallway smelling faintly of cleaning spray and overwatered ficus. Her hand hovered over the door. But before she could knock, it opened from the inside. It was May. No smile today, no lanyard, just a tired face pulled too tight. "Hi," Elise said, quiet. May looked at her a moment, then opened the door wider. "He's sleeping. It's been a rough day." The apartment felt different now, lived in, yes, but heavy. The windows were open slightly, letting in the breeze that tugged gently at the edge of a curtain. The light was soft, late-day golden, and in that glow everything looked gentler than it really was. May led her to the small kitchen. On the table was a box, worn cardboard, dented at one corner. A post-it on top, for May or whoever needs it most. May touched the lid. He left this in the closet, said it was for when the world got confusing. Elise looked at it like it might bite. "Do you want me to open it?" May hesitated, then nodded. Inside were memories, not the kind in frames, the kind that didn't fit anywhere else. A handkerchief embroidered in blue, a page torn from a child's coloring book, taped back together, a seashell, a photo of a young man in uniform, folded twice, and a note, folded once. May passed it to Elise. "Go ahead." Elise opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, in a shaky but careful scrawl, "To May, or to the girl who made me feel like I hadn't lost you yet. Whoever you are, thank you. You reminded me of joy, of sitting at the window and waiting, knowing someone would come. You were a light I didn't know I was missing. I hope the world is kinder to you than it was to me sometimes. Love, Grandpa." Elise pressed the note to her chest. May didn't speak. She just reached out and placed her hand over Elise's. Not for comfort, for recognition, The apartment was silent except for the ticking of a clock. But in that silence, something shifted. Elise didn't feel like an imposter anymore. She felt seen. 3 days passed. No knock, no note, no tea to brew. The stillness settled over Elise's apartment like dust, slowly, softly, suffocating. It was the kind of quiet that didn't bring peace. It brought memory. She moved slower, made 1 cup of tea instead of 2, turned on the radio and turned it back off, checked the hallway more times than she wanted to admit. Then one morning May knocked. Not the old knock. A gentle, polite tap. Elise opened the door with a hollow sort of hope. May stood with a small brown envelope in her hands. "We're moving him to assisted care," she said softly. "It's close by. They specialize in memory support. He's slipping faster now." Elise nodded. She already knew. Not from updates, but from the silence. May held out the envelope. "He asked me to give you this if you didn't come by again." Elise took it with both hands. Inside a photo. Not old, not from a forgotten album. It was Elise and him, sitting at her kitchen table. She was mid-laugh. He was watching her like nothing in the world had ever made him prouder. May must have taken it from the doorway, quietly, without asking. And on the back, written in the same familiar scrawl, "May, even when you weren't you, you were everything." That afternoon, Elise took the bus. Small building, yellow brick, quiet neighborhood. The air smelled like rosemary and sanitizer. She brought a box of lemon cookies, homemade finally, tangy and sweet. He was in the garden, sitting in the shade, eyes half closed. She approached slowly. He looked up. No flicker of recognition. Just a soft, polite smile. "Afternoon, miss." Elise didn't cry. She sat beside him and offered a cookie. He took it, bit in, then paused. "These taste like hers," he murmured. "Like May's." Elise smiled. "Why? That's good. She must have been special." He nodded, gaze far away. "She was my girl." They sat together. Not grandfather and granddaughter. Not imposter and memory. Just 2 people, side by side. The rain was unexpected, a soft, drifting drizzle that glazed the sidewalks in a sheen of silver. Glendale rarely smelled like this. Damp concrete, distant citrus trees, and something gentler riding the air. Elise took it as a sign. She wrapped the cookies in parchment, tucked them into a paper bag, and stood for a long time at the mirror before leaving. No makeup, a clean sweater, her hair loose, just enough of herself to be honest. At 3 p.m. sharp, she crossed the hallway. May answered the door with tired eyes and a wool blanket draped around her shoulders. "You again," she said softly, voice caught somewhere between surprise and relief. "Me again," Elise replied. May hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. The apartment had changed. Gone were the stacks of clutter and endless photos. The furniture had been rearranged, the air purged of the scent of old medicine. Now, fresh tulips in a vase, a new throw on the couch, something between grief and beginning. Elise sat in the same seat she always had. May joined her, folding the blanket tighter around herself. They didn't speak for a while. Elise placed the cookies between them. "I didn't know how to say thank you," she said, voice low, "for not hating me." May picked one up, broke it in half. "You gave him peace," she said. "For 2 weeks he smiled like he hadn't in years. He sat straighter, slept better, told me stories I hadn't heard since I was 12. Elise blinked fast. May placed the broken half on a napkin and pushed it toward her. "I envied you," May admitted. "At first. I thought maybe he remembered you more than he remembered me." Elise swallowed. "I was a stranger." "But you weren't strange to him." The tea kettle began to whistle softly, like it knew when to speak. May stood, poured 2 mugs, and returned with mismatched cups, one with a faded cactus print, the other with a chipped rim. They sipped in silence. Then May opened a drawer in the sideboard and pulled out a stack of notebooks. "His journals," she said. "He kept one for every year. It's all in there, the confusion, the anger, and then you." Elise stared. May opened the top one, flipped through pages until she found a simple entry. "May came today. We had cookies." I remembered how she used to draw suns with faces. Maybe she still does. She passed the notebook over. Elise read it slowly, her fingers brushing the old paper like it might crumble. "He never forgot me," she whispered. "Even if he got your name wrong," May said gently, "he remembered what mattered." Later, May showed her something else, a shoebox of mementos the nurses had helped organize. Inside, a keychain shaped like a piano, a folded sketch of a house by a lake, a note with a phone number Elise had written on a napkin that first week, just in case. He'd kept it all. They talked for hours. About him. About what it meant to be remembered. About being daughters and not always feeling like one. About the aching weight of people fading while you're still trying to hold them together. By the time Elise got up to leave, the rain had stopped. The hallway outside was quiet, warm, with late afternoon light filtering through the window. At her door, May caught her wrist. "You could come visit," she said, "even after he doesn't remember either of us." Elise smiled, eyes full but steady. "I'd like that." And she meant it, not just because he might forget, but because some people, once you meet them, you don't walk away from even if you never knew their name to begin with. The assisted living center sat just past a line of citrus trees, its stucco exterior the color of soft butter. Wind chimes danced lazily on the front porch, and a small wooden sign read, "Clearview Memory Care, where every day is new." Elise arrived alone. She brought books, cookies, and the little sketch he once called May's House by the Lake, now carefully laminated and tucked inside a folder. The receptionist smiled when she said the name. Oh, Mr. Whitmore. He's in the memory room today. That's what we call the front sunroom. He likes the light." Elise found him near the window, sitting in a high-backed chair with a pillow behind his neck. A music box played faintly in the background, something classical, slow and lilting. He didn't look up right away. So she sat beside him. The room smelled of oranges and lavender. There were quilts folded neatly on every chair and framed prints of birds on the walls. Another woman was knitting in the corner, humming. A man was doing a puzzle, pieces shaking slightly in his thin fingers. Elise spoke softly. "Hi, Grandpa." His eyes flicked toward her. There was no recognition, just quiet observation. And then, "I know that voice." He reached out suddenly, placing his hand on hers. "May." She smiled but shook her head. "No, I'm Elise, your neighbor, across the hall." His face twitched, not disappointment, not confusion, just something tender. "You stayed," he said, "even after I forgot." Tears rose fast. She blinked them back. "I did." They sat for a while, looking out at the garden where someone had planted marigolds in rows. He reached into his sweater pocket and pulled out a crumpled tissue, then folded inside a tiny candy lemon-flavored. "Brought you something," he said, offering it like a treasure. She took it, laughing gently. "Thank you." Before she left, May arrived. She carried a clipboard and a sandwich, and looked every bit the daughter who had stepped into caregiver shoes too soon, too fiercely. She sat beside her grandfather, adjusting his blanket without speaking. Elise watched them. And then May looked up. "He won't remember this tomorrow," she said. "But maybe that's okay." Elise nodded. "I will." Back at home, Elise stood in front of her own door for a long time before unlocking it. Inside, she poured 2 cups of tea. She drank one, then placed the other near the window where the light hit just right. She didn't need it to be filled, only to remember that once for a little while she had been someone's granddaughter. Weeks passed. Seasons in Arizona didn't change much, but time moved anyway through smaller things. The way light shifted in the hallway, the new nurse who smiled too brightly, the thinning stack of cookies Elise still baked once a week. She visited Clearview often, sometimes alone, sometimes with May, sometimes just to sit by the window and hold a hand that no longer remembered hers, but still gripped like it mattered. One afternoon, Elise brought a book of poems. He didn't speak that day, just watched her lips move as she read, eyes heavy but content. She didn't need him to answer. Some silences didn't need filling. Some silences were love. In her own apartment, the tea routine remained. 2 cups. Always. The photo of them sat in a simple frame now, not on a shelf, not hidden. Right beside her desk where she translated court documents and love letters and real estate contracts from languages that never quite said what they meant. She looked at it often, not with grief, with gratitude. And across the hall, May came and went, sometimes with calls from doctors, sometimes with laughter and updates from her job. But they stayed connected by more than what had happened, by who they had chosen to be when everything else frayed. One night, as the desert wind whispered down the alley and the stars blinked soft and distant, Elise lit a single candle on the windowsill. No reason, just warmth. She sipped her tea and whispered, "Good night, Grandpa." And in the stillness that followed, it felt like the world exhaled, something it had been holding too long. What would you have done in Elise's place? Could you play someone else's role just to bring peace to a stranger? Have there been people in your life who became closer than family? Share your story in the comments. We read every word.